head into one of the newest segments on this podcast, and it is called Hit or Miss. I'm going to throw out a topic, and you guys got to tell me, is this a hit or a big fat miss? So I'm talking a hit, meaning it's a swing at the bottom of the ninth, the World Series smacks it over the fence, winning the whole thing kind of stuff. And miss is a big fat strike three, swing and a miss, you whiffed, you're out. Fail. So here we go. Screen Rant brought up an 8-year-old debate on social media, and this was amongst the MCU fans concerning the merit of Hawkeye in the Avengers. So I want to hear from you. Is this going to be a hit or a miss? You tell me. Let's dive right on in. The debate is as follows. Quote, is Hawkeye the strongest MCU Avenger? End quote. And they go on to debate as it continues with the talking points that Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, is in fact the only Avenger to be able to subdue Wanda Maximoff, who is the Scarlet Witch, aka the daughter of Magneto. Thor failed to do this, as did all of the other Avengers. And kudos to him and Black Widow for keeping up with Norse gods, gamma radiated giants, and super soldiers. What do you think? Is this a hot take? Is this a hit or a miss? Is Hawkeye actually the strongest Avenger? They want to hear from you. What do you think? Hit or miss? All right, next up for hit or miss is James Gunn. In case you guys don't remember, James Gunn is one of the newer co-CEOs of DC Comics and DC Studios. He has taken over the helm along with his co-CEO, Peter Safran. Now, James Gunn has explained that the new DC Universe continuity from the DCEU. So he is distinguishing the two, okay, from the former very complicated here, there, everywhere, this story arcs of the DCEU, and compares it to the continuity that going forward for the DC Universe of the and he's trying to make a distinguishing difference by saying, quote, nothing is canon until Creature Commandos next year. End quote. And then he says this, to which he is labeling an aperitif to the DC Universe. The franchise will then take a deeper dive with Superman Legacy, marking the first proper DC Studios movie. I want to hear from you guys. Is this a hit or a miss? Because what I got out of that is no mention of The Flash, which was a movie that came out after he was already co-CEOs with Peter Safran for DC Studios and DC Comics. That reset the whole DC universe for them going forward. And since then, we've also had Blue Beetle. And now we're also upcoming later this year, I believe December 21st is it? I think we've talked about it on the podcast quite a bit, is Aquaman 2, The Lost Kingdom. So what about those movies? There's no mention of that. He skips through all of that and just goes, nothing is canon until Creature Commandos. And then after that, we're going to do a deeper dive with Superman Legacy marking the first proper DC Studios movie. So is Blue Beetle not a proper DC Studios movie? Is The Flash not a proper one? What about Aquaman 2? And how come we've had no hype up for Aquaman 2? Is this a hit or a big fat miss? I want to hear from you guys. That one, you have to dig a little bit deeper in between the lines, but I thought that one was, we see what you're doing, James Gunn. Very, very interesting. I am curious to see what he does going forward as the co-CEO. He definitely has strong opinions. And with strong opinions, usually comes a strong vision. So this will be very interesting. We know he's already made clear that John Cena is returning to the DC universe as Peacemaker. You also have Viola Davis coming back to reprise her role as Amanda Waller. And you also have the actor behind Blue Beetle reprising his role for Blue Beetle, as well as a few others, but there has been no mention yet of whether or not Gal Gadot will remain as Wonder Woman. So there's a lot of very interesting things if you read between the lines on that. So I definitely want to hear from you whether or not that's a hit or a miss. Last but not least for hit or miss this week is very similar, but on the flip side with Marvel. Chris Evans recently remarked on his casting as Captain America, and he said, quote, the pros were that I'd be able to take care of my family forever. The cons were that I would become deeply, deeply unhappy with fame and loss of control. I want to hear from you. Is this a hit or a miss? Because I seem to... I wouldn't necessarily say that I get frustrated with this kind of thing, but at the same time, I am empathetic because I am a human and I know what it's like to go after your dreams and realize it never even comes close to how you thought it was going to be as a child. But at the same time, when you're an adult, there's been so many statistics that you should be able to read off of. And instead of expecting it to be different, you should probably expect the industry to be more of the same until enough people are ready to change it and have enough power over the status quo to change it. You know, big surprise, somebody, you know, isn't happy with fame from Hollywood. And yeah, it is a big deal. You end up living in the smallest, most see-through, visible, vulnerable, awe-inspiring, yet constricting fishbowl of all time. You know, for everybody to see and critique, and nothing you do makes everyone happy, including yourself. You lose sight of yourself, even though you're being presented the opportunities of a lifetime. And then you start having these real legitimate conversations with yourself where you're like, this was my dream. This was the end goal, but it wasn't what I thought. So what I was wishing for and hoping for and dreaming for and praying for, was that really what I was asking for? And a lot of times it's not. And that's why we talk about on this podcast the daily rent for the success that you want. Like, a lot of you want to be in wrestling, but you don't really understand what it's truly like. And the sacrifices that you're going to have to make now that will affect you for the rest of your life. Nobody really talks about that as much as they should. It's the same thing in Hollywood. You know, you have people like Rose McGowan telling you exactly how it is, but then you have so many people going into it expecting it to be different when it's always been that way. And getting worse. So it's very interesting. So is this a hit? Is this a hot take from Chris Evans? Is this a hit or a miss? I feel like maybe it's both. I don't know, because I loved his portrayal of Captain America. He's one of my all-time favorites in comics. I just love that World War II era vibe, all American. You know, I love it. I love it. But yeah, I mean, what he is saying here is so real, and it's raw, and it's meaningful, and I think so many people are going to miss that. So is this a hot take hit, or is this a big fat swing for the fences and miss? I want to hear from you guys.